We eating like it's Thanksgiving, nigga, get your weight up. Serving them whole pies, but I ain't a waiter. Bottles on deck, catching waves like Kelly Slater. They got their hands out, but I ain't doing favors.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're doing the rest of the reaction video I was doing last time. It took me a little time to finish it, but well, we are here today. So, not even gonna say anything. Let's just get right to it. Speak up.
Another name tied to the killings was Kendrick Johnson, who eventually pled guilty to conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in the April 1st, 2010 shootings of Charles Noki Matthews and Daryl Bleak Milton. Both men were gunned down while sitting in a car in Baton Rouge. Johnson had originally been scheduled to stand trial on first-degree murder charges, but prosecutors struck a deal after assessing the evidence. Although these murders happened in broad daylight and there were many people out there, only one person, other than Michael Louding, identified anyone, the prosecutor said. That witness only identified Kendrick Johnson and could not identify the other two shooters. The witness credibility would have been a huge factor at trial due to his extensive criminal history and continuing criminal behavior. Based on Marlo Mike's statements and his 2010 grand jury testimony, he and four others, Johnson, Reginald Youngblood, Ryan Sneaks Carroll, and Jonathan Rogers, were all indicted for the killings of Noki and Bleak. But after Mike recanted, prosecutors were forced to drop the charges against Youngblood, Carroll, and Rogers. What made the case even more disturbing was Mike's behavior after the murders. Witnesses said that after shooting Noki and Bleak, he remained at the scene and even comforted Bleak's sister, who recalled, "I just want to know why. He called me his sister. He was like a brother to me." Other relatives remembered Mike staying close to the family afterward, even appearing at Bleak's funeral and offering condolences. To them, it was baffling, but prosecutors suggested Boosie had told him to do it as a cover, so no one would suspect a connection.
Damn, this nigga Boosie, bro. Just cause your life fucked up, that don't mean you gotta fuck other people's life, bro. You could have put that kid in a better path. Like, you had the opportunity to, yet you still chose not to. Like, be goddamn for real, bro.
Daryl Bleak Milton's death cut even deeper because he had once been one of Boosie's closest friends. The two had a strong bond, but it wasn't without conflict. While Boosie was serving a 4-year sentence on drugs and weapons charges, tension grew over Bleak's decision to hang around Johnny Red, a man who had previously stolen from Boosie's home. For Boosie, loyalty was everything, and seeing his supposed best friend spend time with someone who had violated him didn't sit right. The tension only escalated when word spread that Johnny Red had supposedly put a price on Boosie's.
How you gonna feel violated when you literally violating a child's life like that? Like, bro, like I said, like, that nigga, he could have put Marlo in a better life. Like, he could have pushed him for a better life. Like, there's a lot of things, a lot of programs and all of that, you know, to help kids. Like, and that nigga had all the money. Like, he had a good amount of money, put it like that. So that right there shows you, like, trust no one, bro. I'm sorry, but trust no one.
Head. Bleak knew about it but continued associating with Red regardless. Not long after, Bleak was gunned down alongside Noki. Whether Boosie had any role in arranging his death has never been proven, but the possibility lingered, and some believed it may have served as a motivating factor for Marlo Mike. Mike's violent streak didn't end there. He was also indicted for second-degree murder in the killing of Michael Smith, a 19-year-old found shot behind a home on Wisteria Street on December 18, 2009. That charge was eventually dismissed, but at the time, Smith was believed to be Mike's final victim of 2009. At the beginning of the legal process, Mike turned on his own crew, cooperating with authorities and providing statements that tied multiple associates to various murders. Most significantly, He implicated Boosie, telling detectives that the rapper had ordered the hit on Terry Boyd. His statements became the backbone of the case against Boosie and helped prosecutors indict him for first-degree murder. But when it came time to testify, Mike shocked the courtroom, recanting his statements and telling the jury that Boosie had nothing to do with Boyd's killing. He claimed his earlier confessions were coerced by investigators who had threatened him with the death penalty and the imprisonment of his family. With Mike reversing course, several co-defendants in the case struck plea deals, receiving sentences between 15 and 20 years. But for Boosie, the reversal proved critical. Mike even sent letters apologizing to him from jail, and later testified in Boosie's defense. In the end, the man prosecutors had once called the teen hitman helped clear Boosie of the murder charge, and Boosie badass walked free.
How in the hell, bro? That nigga escaped the fucking death row. Bro, this is.
After Marlo Mike's conviction on April 26, 2013, the trial court originally scheduled his sentencing for September 12, 2013. However, the date was later moved up to July 9, a decision that sparked heavy objection from the defense. At a June 6 status hearing, Mike's attorneys argued that the accelerated schedule would severely hinder their preparation. They had retained a mitigation specialist, Juliet Yeakel, who was building a comprehensive timeline and gathering background evidence to present during sentencing. Compressing the schedule, they argued, would make it impossible to secure full psychological evaluations and other mitigating material. The prosecution countered by saying that a mitigation specialist wasn't necessary, since the judge himself was fully capable of weighing sentencing factors. They also stressed that Yeakel wasn't a psychologist but rather a defense attorney with experience in capital cases, hired to support Mike's legal team. To further undercut the defense's argument, the state introduced Mike's school records and pointed out that he had already been evaluated by two mental health professionals, Dr. Joy Terrell and Dr. Andrew Morrison. The court ultimately stuck with the July 9 date, rejecting the defense's repeated requests for a delay. The judge emphasized that a pre-sentence investigation report, PSI, had already been ordered and that he needed nothing from a mitigation expert. While he allowed both sides to introduce mitigating evidence under House Bill 152 and offered to sign orders for additional school, medical, or criminal records, he refused to push sentencing back. As a small concession, the court extended the time frame for filing the motion to reconsider, so the defense could continue pursuing mitigation after sentencing. On July 3rd, defense attorneys again argued that the PSI was inadequate because it evaluated rehabilitation only from a probation and parole officer's standpoint, not that of a psychologist. They pushed for more time to secure a psychological evaluation, but the court denied the motion. At the July 9, 2013 sentencing hearing, the state called Major Michael Vaughn of Louisiana State Penitentiary's Investigative Services. Vaughn testified about a letter Mike had mailed to Boosie 3 months earlier, on April 9, 2013. In it, Mike reminisced about them good old days, F-hoes, smoke and perp, clubbing, which the prosecution used to undercut the defense's argument that Mike was remorseful or deserving of leniency. In mitigation, defense counsel attempted to call their mitigation specialist, EMS, Juliet Yeakel, to testify on Mike's behalf. The state immediately objected, pointing back to the trial court's earlier statement that it required nothing from a mitigation specialist. Defense counsel responded that the court's prior remark was made only in the context of denying an extension of the sentencing date, not as a blanket ruling against mitigation testimony. They argued that preventing M's. Yeagle from testifying would effectively bar Mike from presenting important mitigating evidence to the court. The prosecution countered that Yeagle's testimony was not truly expert evidence but instead an attempt to introduce second-hand information from family members and acquaintances under the guise of expertise, describing her role as that of a mitigation investigator rather than a qualified expert. Defense counsel maintained that M's. Yeagle's background and training made her qualified to testify as an expert on mitigating circumstances in capital cases, and, alternatively, that she should at least be allowed to testify as a lay witness about her personal knowledge of Mike's history. The trial court rejected this argument, making clear that it was not interested in hearing Yeagle's credentials, professional background, or the general work she had performed in preparing Mike's case. Instead, the court explained it only wished to hear from witnesses with direct, first-hand knowledge of Michael Louding's life and character. As a result, M's. Yeagle was permitted to testify only in a limited capacity regarding a few steps she had taken to investigate Mike's past, but she was barred from offering her own conclusions or expert opinions. Ultimately, most of her statements were excluded after the state successfully objected to them as hearsay from a non-expert witness. Following M's. Yeagle's testimony, the defense presented several witnesses close to Mike, including his mother, Sharon Louding, his aunt, Peggy Palmer, his sister, Lakendra Louding, and Baton Rouge Public Defender Jack Harrison. Mike's family members collectively described the hardships of his upbringing, painting a picture of a childhood marked by instability, poverty, and exposure to violence. They testified that he grew up in an overcrowded household in a high-crime neighborhood, where, at a young age, he witnessed a man being shot and killed. His education also reflected these struggles. He performed poorly in school, except during a brief period when he thrived in a military-style program that offered him structure and discipline. After leaving that program and returning to a traditional school setting, however, he again fell behind and was eventually expelled. Lakendra testified that while Mike did have anger issues, he was never violent toward others. His life took another turn at 14, when he began living with Boosie, a change that deeply worried his mother, who feared Boosie's influence. Sharon also testified that Mike once confided he was hearing voices, and though she tried to get him professional help, he resisted, fearing he would be institutionalized. Despite the challenges, Mike's family members expressed unconditional support, telling the court that if he were ever paroled, he would always have a home with them.
It's crazy though, like how did he, like the part that they said he seen a man get shot in front of him or get killed in front of him. That's the part where I always ask, like, why was he there? Hmm? Why? Because if he wasn't there, he would have never seen it. And as a parent, if you know you live in a dangerous neighborhood, when you have kids, the least you could do is try to find a new place to live. It don't have to be a big home. It don't have to be the most comfortable place in the world. But you have kids, children, the future. You just gonna keep them in that same environment that you've been around your whole life, just so they could be fucked up too. And I get it. You put your kid in a military school, whatever, and then it gets off, and then he comes to school, and then gets expelled, whatever. Right there, if my kid gets off from military school and goes to regular school after, and he gets expelled, and I see something is wrong with him, I don't care what he really wants at that point. I'm gonna do what I think is best for him or for her. And clearly you can see nobody chose to do that. Because if you see your kid is going the wrong path, even if he's telling you he's hearing voices, I'm sorry, put him in a mental institution, whatever it's called, or something. Anger management class, whatever it is. There's all of that. Like all you needed to do was have a social worker. Go to the school, complain yourself. They would have got how to give you a social worker. Because I know social work has been around for a minute, so.
Jack Harrison testified and briefly recounted Mike's history within the juvenile justice system. He noted that Mike had committed juvenile offenses including possession of a handgun and careless operation, along with some deferred drug charges. Harrison described his visit to Mike's home, observing that while it was clean, it was sparsely furnished, reflecting the family's financial hardships. He further testified that Mike had never been adjudicated as a child in need of care, nor had his family ever been found to require services. Mike then addressed the court briefly, expressing remorse and regret for his actions. He apologized to the victims' families and stated that, had he known then what he knows now, he would not have committed the offenses. The state also read a short impact statement from Terica Boyd, Terry's sister. The pre-sentence investigation report concluded that Mike's prior and current actions indicated he could not be rehabilitated and recommended a sentence of life imprisonment at hard labor, without the benefit of probation, parole, or suspension of sentence. In imposing this sentence, the trial court cited extensive reasons, noting it was following the legislature's guidelines for individualized sentencing hearings for juvenile homicide offenders. The court remarked that Mike might find redemption in prison, observing that Mike's letter to Boosie suggested he intended to stay in the Bible. The court stated it had thoroughly reviewed the PSI, including the details of Mike's extensive criminal history, and had considered the Miller factors. The court described Mike as possessing common sense and being very street smart, despite being only 17 at the time of the homicide. It also acknowledged the personal and familial pressures Mike faced, including exposure to a gangster lifestyle and Boosie's influence. The court emphasized the leadership role Mike played in Boyd's murder, while noting its belief that every offender has potential for rehabilitation. The trial court concluded that Mike represented the worst of the worst and sentenced him to life imprisonment at hard labor, without the benefit of probation, parole, or suspension of sentence. Following his initial sentencing, Mike filed a motion to reconsider the sentence, accompanied by a motion for leave to complete his mitigation investigation. In these motions, Mike argued that the trial court had failed to consider all relevant mitigating factors under Miller v. Alabama. Defense counsel specifically cited records intended to demonstrate Mike's potential for rehabilitation, including supplemental security income, SSI, records, special education records, juvenile court records, child protective services records, psychiatric records, and medical records. However, many of these records primarily reflected circumstances within Mike's childhood household and did not directly pertain to Mike himself. Mike's resentencing hearing occurred on February 7, 2014. The defense called Dr. Frederick Sauter, a clinical psychologist, who was accepted by the trial court as an expert in clinical psychology and in diagnosing post-traumatic stress disorder, particularly in veterans. Dr. Sauter had interviewed Mike on December 27, 2013, in preparation for the resentencing. During the evaluation, he identified a number of traumatic events in Mike's life that qualified as traumatic stressors. These included witnessing a murder, experiencing the murder of a childhood friend, an alleged sexual assault against Mike's sister committed by another family member, and allegations that Mike himself had suffered abuse during childhood. Dr. Sauter testified that in situations where individuals experience traumatic events, their vulnerability to PTSD is mitigated when they have social support. From his interview with Mike, Dr. Sauter believed that Mike likely lacked consistent support from his biological family. He further explained that individuals suffering from PTSD often turn to substance abuse as a coping mechanism to avoid confronting past traumas. Dr. Sauter emphasized that while Mike's extremely impoverished home environment would not in itself constitute a traumatic stressor, the broader context in which trauma occurred was a critical factor for consideration. He characterized Mike's expulsion from school in 7th grade as an example of adversity that likely compounded his developmental challenges. In summary, Dr. Sauter testified that Mike endured severe trauma at a young age, which had a significant impact on his psychological and emotional development into adulthood. At that point, Dr. Sauter could not conclude that Mike was irretrievably broken or beyond rehabilitation. He noted that if Mike did suffer from PTSD, the condition was treatable, with approximately 70 to 80% of treated patients showing substantial symptom reduction. Dr. Sauter further recommended that additional evaluation of Mike was warranted, including interviews with family members and a biologically oriented psychoanalysis, to more fully understand his mental health and rehabilitative potential. In resentencing Mike to life imprisonment at hard labor, the trial court again articulated extensive.
Bro, I feel like that all that kid needed was some therapy and meditation. Okay? Natural vibes. Clear all the negativity out of your system. All them demons off your head. That's the thing that I noticed. A lot of people don't do that though. Like a lot of times you really need to relax. Like, breathe. Talk to somebody. Like talk to like a therapist, whatever. Speak like let everything out. Cause if you don't let things out, that's how shit gets built up. Like you see, he seen his friend got killed. He seen a man get killed in front of him. You know, childhood trauma. Like got abused as a child. Like I'm not gonna lie, I didn't get abused as a child, but I got my ass whooped. Not gonna lie, till today I remember every single one of them ass whooping. But I'm not gonna compare my life with his. This shit is crazy. Cause my child, bro, I would have give you, I would have put you in therapy. We would have meditated together. We would have went walks together. Like, especially seeing the parents wasn't even, what, they didn't struggle. Like, like as I said, like their life, like, you could see the house, everything was good. So why did a kid come out like that? Like, because you wasn't keeping your eye on them, you know? You wasn't supporting your kid. You wasn't giving your kid advices. You wasn't put it like talking, like, knowing what's going on in your child's life in general. Until he came and told you, oh, or you heard he seen somebody get shot. Or after you find out his best friend got killed. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, it's complicated, bro. Like, life is so fucking hard. Some people have opportunities, to make sure their kids or they don't follow the same path as others. Yet they still do it. Like you can see people get shot right in front of you, right? That's traumatizing. But you could just, how can I say, talk to somebody about it, consistently. Go for walks, listen to music, not no murder, not no joke, no joke, none of that. Like relaxation stuff to calm your mind. Like I don't know. I'm a spiritual person, so a lot of times that's what I do. I just even though I know deep down, like every time, like you never, never, never really forget everything that happened in your life. But it's just Like sometimes you could choose, to just keep them off your mind for a bit. Like, you can't let that fuck up your life because he let that fuck up his life, by childhood trauma, seeing his friend, die, seeing a man get shot. Like, in my opinion, you could choose, to keep your mind off of it. And like I say, by doing that is by go for a run, go hiking, go do whatever you want to do. But no, you don't even know drill shit, none of that gangster shit. Cause that's what the fuck got you in the first place. So I blame the parents because why was he there that day to see a man get shot? Was you watching your kid? What was he doing? Nothing. Watching TV, talking to your friends. Hmm.
Of reasoning for its decision. The court first referenced the evidence presented at trial concerning Mike's involvement not only in the instant homicide but also in several other violent acts. The court stated that in preparation for the resentencing hearing, it had carefully reviewed the records submitted by the defense, the transcript of Mike's interrogation, the letter he had sent to Boosie, and various items admitted into evidence during the trial. The trial court noted that Dr. Sauter, Mr. Harrison, and M''S. Yekel had not been present for any portion of the original trial proceedings. While recognizing Dr. Sauter's opinion that Mike's participation in the homicides might have been influenced by conditions such as PTSD and depression, factors which could serve as mitigating circumstances, the court emphasized that these can
Exactly. I know there's ways to calm PTSD down. I know there's ways to take stress off your system. Why wasn't anybody helping him? Like, while he was depressed, like you could see when somebody was depressed. Like, why wasn't anybody helping him with his depression situation or with his PTSD situation? That's where it all comes to. Like, nobody was helping him when he was going through depression, or when all them PTSD attacks. Nobody was there to calm him down, to tell him everything's gonna be okay. So how are you gonna expect them to come out like the angel that his parents wanted him to be? Like, bro.
conditions did not constitute justifications or excuses for Mike's conduct. The court specifically found that nothing about the circumstances of the Boyd homicide correlated directly with the potential stressors identified by Dr. Sauter. The trial court concluded that it could not establish a clear nexus between Dr. Sauter's psychological findings and the criminal acts committed by Mike. Consequently, the trial court reaffirmed its prior sentence of life imprisonment at hard labor, without the benefit of probation, parole, or suspension of sentence, citing the gravity of the offenses, Mike's leadership role in the homicide, and the lack of mitigating connection between his mental health conditions and the crime itself. With respect to Dr. Sauter's finding that Mike is capable of rehabilitation, the trial court observed that Mike's teachers had testified he was capable of learning. The court noted that while Mike was provided with appropriate educational models, he failed to take advantage of those opportunities. Instead, the trial court found that Mike frequently chose to engage in antisocial behavior and disregard the educational and social supports available to him. After considering all the evidence presented by the defense, the court concluded that Mike had not met his burden to demonstrate a capacity for rehabilitation. Continuing its reasoning, the trial court found no evidence that Mike's decision-making at the time of the offense was meaningfully impaired by mental illness, depression, or substance use in a way that would constitute a mitigating factor. The court acknowledged that Mike had lived in overcrowded and substandard housing, but it emphasized that he and his siblings' basic needs were nonetheless met within a supportive and loving environment. Regarding Mike's youth, the court determined that his chronological age and any developmental immaturity were not sufficiently significant to warrant substantial consideration as mitigating factors. The court further detailed the circumstances of Boyd's murder, noting that Mike had committed the act with a sense of pride and out of loyalty to Boosie. Taking all of these considerations together, the trial court concluded that the likelihood of Mike embracing redemptive behavior was low, stating that the root of his personhood has become incorrigible. For these reasons, the court characterized Mike as the worst of the worst and the rarest of the rare of juvenile offenders, and it reaffirmed the original sentence of life imprisonment and hard labor, without the benefit of probation, parole, or suspension of sentence. Again, the sole issue raised by Mike in his motion to suppress concerned whether the videotaped recordings of his interrogations provided any proof that his Miranda rights had been read to him at any point during questioning. At the time of these interrogations, Mike was indisputably in custody. At both the suppression hearing and trial, Detective Howard testified that Mike was advised of his Miranda rights on each occasion that detectives spoke with him. A review of the videotaped confessions indicates that, with respect to the May 14, 2010, and May 17, 2010, interrogations, Mike was clearly informed of his Miranda rights. Notably, during his first interrogation, Mike began to explain his understanding of Miranda rights to the officers before they had even read the rights to him. At no point during any of the recorded interviews did Mike request an attorney or otherwise ask for a break from questioning. He appeared fully cognizant of his rights, demonstrated an understanding of them, and voluntarily waived those rights in order to speak with police. In sum, considering the totality of the circumstances, the evidence demonstrates that Mike's statements on May 14th and May 17th were made following proper advisement and waiver of Miranda rights by the interrogating detectives. Contrary to Detective Howard's testimony, the videotapes of Mike's May 18th, 2010, and May 19th, 2010, interrogations do not reflect that Mike was explicitly Mirandized immediately prior to his interactions with the police on those dates. Although the majority of these interactions involved Mike identifying individuals from photographic lineups, he did make several inculpatory statements regarding certain homicides. Nonetheless, it is important to note that Mike had already been informed of his Miranda rights at the time of his arrest, prior to his May 14th and May 17th statements. Except in circumstances indicating coercion or a significant change in custodial conditions, there is no requirement to reiterate Miranda warnings at every stage of interrogation. Detective Howard testified that Mike never resisted questioning and never requested counsel. Additionally, Detective Howard stated that no threats, promises, inducements, or other attempts at coercion were made toward Mike, and that he was made as comfortable as possible, including being provided food, drinks, and breaks. At the time of the May 18th and May 19th interactions, Mike had already been thoroughly informed of his Miranda rights. The record demonstrates that Mike both understood and intelligently waived these rights, explicitly through acknowledgement and implicitly through his conduct and statements during the interrogations. The central issue in this case was the life sentence imposed on Marlo Mike, who was deemed extremely dangerous and showed a blatant disregard for human life. His involvement in multiple homicides at such a young age demonstrates a shocking level of coldness and callousness. Mike received the harshest sentence among his co-defendants because he was responsible for the majority of the crimes and was the common factor across all the murder cases. While his severe mental health issues and environmental influences may have played a role in his development, they do not excuse the gravity of his actions. This concludes the summary of today's case. Thank you for reading, and stay tuned for more content on cases like this. That wraps up this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Stay safe, and may God bless you all. Hosanna in Excelsis.
We done with this with that video. Okay, so clearly they couldn't help him because the last part. I'm sorry for even laughing, but my allergy kicking and everything. Clearly the last part you could see like he already knew. he was already doing what he did and all that. And to be honest though, PTSD shouldn't be a reason to kill anybody. Depression shouldn't be a reason to kill anybody. If you know, you know. But besides that, I'll say Boosie's the one that fucked his life over. Literally. That nigga was a mistake. Big mistake for that boy's life. And he didn't have no other help at that time besides Boosie. But 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 that's it for today, guys. I'm kind of tired. You know, this video was like 20, 22, 24 minutes, but it was good enough. And not gonna lie, I was holding my back in this video because the first part I watched, that part already had me flipping out. Like I had, like I said, I had opinions, I had questions, I have everything, like literally everything was coming over here. But you know, everybody keeps their opinion. You know, a lot of times we keep our opinions and our judgments ourselves because what can we do besides just watch or just listen? But yeah, guys, that's it for today. That's it for this video channel. I'm sick. Oh. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, bro. I really hope you guys enjoyed it because for real. Now you see how I'm dying? Look like I'm dying. If you guys don't like this video, bro, it's gonna be a problem. I'm just playing. But okay. Stay safe. God bless. One love.